Welcome to the Mind Solve podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan. The topic of this episode is everything I wanted to learn in graduate school about becoming an entrepreneur, starting a private therapy practice. In this episode, I will be interviewing my friend, Howard Levitt, a California licensed marriage family therapist, who will be sharing with you as a listener some gems of his knowledge, his many years of experience and insights about how to start a private practice as a psychotherapist. Now, the goal in mind for this episode is twofold. First and foremost is really to allow you to open your mind using what we call in mindfulness a beginner's mind about the idea of actually pursuing entrepreneurship in your respective profession. The second goal is to narrow in on one field of profession, being psychotherapy, and to learn from Howard's great experiences and his insights that he'll be sharing throughout this interview discussion today. Now, before we get into it, before I officially introduce Howard and have him share his background, I am going to cover the nature of this discussion today in framework by sharing that I will get into some high-level macro view relevant data about entrepreneurship as it exists today post COVID-19. We've seen some businesses survive that and some that have not, so we've got some updated data on that information at a high level, so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get right into the interview questions. So before I cover some of that high-level information, I want to start by officially welcoming Howard. So welcome, thank you for being here today and participating as our guest. And what I'd like to do is just turn it over to you, Howard, to talk about your story. Share with our listeners your background and experience in your profession.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. I do come from a rather interesting position into psychotherapy. Originally, I wanted to be a businessman, excuse me, and I studied economics, nearly a master's degree in econ. And through a variety of things that happened in my life, ended up coming out of Peace Corps training, decided I need a job somewhere. It was in the era where everybody was working for aerospace. I decided, no, I'm not going to sit in a little cubicle all day long ordering parts. So I ended up becoming a deputy probation officer for LA County. And I figured, how exciting is that going to be, right? And from that experience, I was unmarried at the time. It was just kind of a fun gig to have. And then got married. We had a family. And suddenly I'm realizing, wait a minute, I'm capitated. I'm stuck here at the time, $975 every 2 weeks, I think, something like that. I went, oh my God, this is not going to work. And I'd been told all of my young career at that point, Howard, you got a good way with people. People like to talk to you. And I go, oh yeah, I'm not going to sit in a room and talk to people. No way. And excuse me, 50 years later, here I am sitting in a room talking to people. The question, I certainly don't hold myself out as an expert. I certainly can share with everybody a lot of the pitfalls that I went through, and then stepping back now and looking at my life and my career, the things I'd like to share with people so they don't have to make the same mistakes over. To give you a quick history of me, went to Cal State Northridge, got my degree. Well, actually, first went to USC in the School of Social Work, and I was going to get my social work degree. Snapped my Achilles tendon, couldn't go to surgery for a year recovery, couldn't go to classes. Ended up going to Cal State Northridge and got my degree there. Got my license and said, wow, here I am, a young guy, got 2 children, wife. My wife was a nurse, but stayed home to raise the family. And I'm the sole source of money at this point. So I realized that if I had my license, I could charge per hour. And my world was up to me. I wasn't controlled by anybody. And so with that, I went into a small private practice, and I reconnected with a dear friend from high school,
Hmm.
Pat Katsky by name, Patricia Katsky. And Pat and I were sitting, and I said, Pat, you have an MFT license. She goes, yeah. I said, so do I. Why don't we start a mental health center? And I'm figuring that's a good way to make money. I got her. Pat's great. She was a Jungian therapist. And the beauty of that was Pat turned to me and said, yeah, let's do it.
Hmm.
And that's how Counseling West was born. So we created a non-for-profit Counseling West, which is still in existence in the San Fernando Valley. And we were an interesting dynamic. I did all of the marketing. I did all of the connecting with the community, and Pat was internal. She did all of the quality control and the supervision. I'm not good at supervision. I openly admit that. Don't like it. Don't have the patience for that. But Pat was wonderful. So there was Counseling West. We grew it to 5 offices, about 50 staff.
Wow.
But from a financial point of view, nonprofits are, they're a lot of work. And there's not always a lot of money to be made. So you have to have a good business acumen about it. And Pat did. Pat taught at UCLA in the Graduate School of Business. So she also was good. But her focus was on excellent quality of service. And mine was on volume. So I was responsible to bring in clients. So that's Counseling West. And I have a lot of experience with the not-for-profit world.
Hmm.
It's interesting, Jonathan. I think people need to step back at this point. If you're thinking about a career in psychotherapy, it seems to me there are 3 branches to look at. Private practice being one. The second major area is the not-for-profit world or the non-government agencies. And the third is a government agency. I don't see any other avenue for people to go. Private practice, a government agency or a non-government agency. And I did a spreadsheet on that, looking at what are the pluses and minuses of each of those areas. And let me just take a quick second. I don't know if this is hopefully interesting to your listeners, but I looked at, excuse me, pardon me, things to consider. I call it a decision tree. And I listed about 16 or 15 items here. And one thing to begin to look at is who's going to be the boss in your life. Do you want to be the boss and run your own world? And you do everything from emptying the waste baskets to billing people to providing the psychotherapy to everything. You're the total boss. If you're in government work, you're going to have a boss. If you're in private non-government, you're still going to have a boss. Even though I was the head, Pat and I ran Counseling West, by law, you have a board of directors. So you ultimately report to the board of directors. So you're still not your own boss. I have things like income. What's the difference in the income between private practice and government work? Remember, in private practice, you have a limited number of hours that you can work during the week. So it's not like open-ended, you can keep going. And then you have all the other support work you have to do. Location. Where do you go? Where do you want to work? If you're in one of those 3 areas, your choice of hours, choice of clients, opportunities for advancement, professional isolation, clinical support, case conferencing, use of insurance, startup costs, paperwork, delay in income. So those are kind of a broad brush there of looking at the 3 different avenues.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
That's great information to get us started off with, Howard. So thank you for sharing that insight. I want to piggyback that a little bit with some data that I think is going to be important to consider as well as we're talking to a larger audience and then we're scoping in when we get into the interview questions. So let me just share some of the things that I've been looking at recently. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration latest reporting, we estimate that we have about 33.3 million small businesses operating right now. And 99% of all businesses in the US are small businesses. Most people don't always consider that or recognize it, but you know, uh, because of big corporations being major employers, that can get lost in the translation at times. Now, with that data point, it's also interesting to note that 27 million of these small businesses are businesses that are operated by one or multiple owners without any direct reporting employees. It's like partnerships or sole proprietorships or LLCs that are smaller operations of collaborative, kind of the way you described your partner Pat. You and I starting out with your nonprofit organization. So that's still the case today. Along with that point of reference, 80% of these small businesses that are operating with maybe one or two or three owners represent about 62 million jobs across the country, which is about 46% of the US workforce. So that was surprising for me to see that almost half of the workforce is made up of small business owners or operators who are running their own businesses for themselves. Now, with respect to that, just 16% of small businesses have 1 to 19 employees, which equates to about another 5.4 million businesses that account for that 16%. And another 650,000 businesses have employees ranging from 20 to 500 employees. So a smaller, population of small businesses are employing larger groups of people at that number, a range above 20 up to 500 employed. I share all that because I think that it's important for me to call out that there are some really talented people with lots of background experience that maybe started like you did, Howard. They got an undergraduate degree in economics and thought they were going to do something different. And they found themselves down a pathway of interest for family planning, or the economy changes and they're thinking it's always about getting a job and not always considering all their options, including owning their own business or starting their own private practice in psychotherapy if they happen to be in the psychology field. So I wanted to give that context along with a couple of the points here, and then we'll transition. Now, this was really interesting that I really found fascinating for me to read. Industry trends show that the professional and business service industry currently has the most current job openings in skilled labor positions like management, consulting, specialized services. From just a job population, that is the most trending at this moment right now. And we see a lot of people, including who have a psychology degree or background, going into consulting, working with organizations or going into management using psychology with the intersection of business and other disciplines to, fill some important roles or jobs at organizations. Now, in addition to that trend, here's the forecast. Industry growth forecast states that the highest projected growth rate is in the industry of home health care and personal care sector, with a projection over the next decade to see as high as 22%. That's large. And with that 22% growth, it's estimating about 800,000 new jobs coming over the next decade. These are people who are practicing in our respective field of psychotherapy, some of them in long-term care, as we're seeing an aging demographic, people who are living longer. We are in a time where we have, I think, 5 generations living simultaneously, and transfer of assets and wealth, and people needing care and health care, both medical, home care, and mental health care. So the outlook is pretty promising in the field of psychotherapy and psychology, and there's going to be a need for more professionals to come into the field. So I'm really, really excited as I talk to a lot of my friends and associates in the field. You and I have had some great conversations about this particular topic. You're doing some amazing work on developing a really powerful workshop to help others learn how to make that move. I'm excited to get into these questions today to get right at the heart of some of the common questions that I've come up with that I often hear from my peers that I have coming out of grad school, wondering like, how would I even go about doing this? How would I even start a private therapy practice? So with that, Howard, let's get into it.
Absolutely. Great.
All right.
Go
So
ahead. Fire away.
All right. The first question I have for you is whether you're a newly licensed therapist or a pending licensed registered therapist or an experienced licensed practitioner, what are the key steps in the process to start a private practice?
I think the first step would be to ask yourself, what is the vision that you want for yourself? What do you see yourself doing? I think it's really important if you're a young person, age-wise, experience-wise. Obviously, you're not going to be as effective, in my opinion, with an older crowd. As a matter of fact, I'm finding that for me as a niche now, because of my age, people are coming in of the much older generation and are very comfortable with me because I'm older than most of them, and they can't turn to me and say, well, you don't know. So in starting your practice, when you think about what is your vision for yourself? How do you see yourself? Are you going to be a generalist, or are you going to have a specific niche? And I know CAMF, this California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, published a while ago a list of 100 niche opportunities.
Wow.
And you say, 100? Yeah, 100 possibilities. And just quickly running off just a few of them: grief and death, media consulting, gay and lesbian issues, depression, self-esteem, pet grief, the use of pets in therapy, juvenile sex offenders, chronic anger, Christian counseling. It goes on and on. And my point is that I think if you take the time now and sit down and ask yourself, what does it really look like? What am I feeling it's going to look like in the future? What do I see myself being? And next, have a plan. The Small Business Administration offers free uh, business plans. And the business plan forces you to sit down and think about things that normally mental health professionals aren't going to be thinking about. It's just, we're not trained. There's nothing in graduate school that talks about it. I teach at Pepperdine, and I brought that up at Pepperdine. And they, oh, no, we don't have time for that. We can do it as an extracurricular, but it's not part of the program. So go to the Small Business Administration, pull up. They have a traditional plan and a more brief one. Either one is fine because it starts you to think about things like the executive summary, the company description, market analysis. He said, wait a minute, hey, I'm a trained therapist. What do I know about market analysis? No, I think once you're teased into that thinking, as an example, if you say, I want to work in, and I'll make up the San Fernando Valley. For those of you that don't know, it's an area just north of Los Angeles, 1.3 million population. I think it's 1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's a valley unto itself. And you say, well, maybe I'd like to work there. Okay, so start thinking about where are the affluent areas, where are the non-affluent areas, who's gonna be my clients. It starts you to think about, how am I going to get a client? That's one of the most difficult things. You can go rent an office very easily. You put some money down, and I have a whole section on what to look for in renting an office. But let's stay with the overview here. You're going to rent the office. You're going to put some furniture in there. You're going to put your box of Kleenex, the clock on the wall, and now what? And now what? So how are people going to know you? You and I met at a camp meeting, and struck up a friendship, and it was, I probably will be referring at some point to you, and maybe vice versa. How do you grow up? There you go. There's your practice. And you say, well, gee, I know Howard. He deals with that elder group, and yeah, I've got this really difficult. I'm going to send him to Howard. So there you go. You start looking and ask yourself, what is my image? What do I want to look like? And then how do I start to focus on the plan? Work the plan. I did not. I'm not going to sit here and sound like, oh yeah, Howard. No, I had no plan really, other than I needed money, and I knew that Pat and I were good friends, and I trusted her. She trusted me. But I think in retrospect, we would have done a lot better had Pat and I sat down and really done a long-term business plan. At one point we had 5 offices. We had a lot of people, but okay. We hired an executive director, but I started another business with another dear friend, Yardena Hurwitz, and an attorney. And we started divorce mediation services.
Hmm.
And there we did sit down, and there we did decide, okay, the division of labor, what we're comfortable with, and so on. And we grew that nicely because we had a plan and we tended to follow it. I don't know if there's that kind of a long-winded answer. Hopefully that began to
That
give
hit
some
the
structure.
Yeah, that hit the spot. I took down a couple of notes that I'm going to use in our wrap up. I do want to
Good,
call out though
good.
before I move on to the next question that what you stated is so important is having a plan. It's a very simple point, yet a powerful one, and leveraging great resources like the Small Business Administration's template that's out there that
Yes.
gets kind of hidden in the internet of all the other stuff that's out there. The abbreviated version versus the expanded version of a full business plan, and talking to people who have experience. Like, I don't have to go learn 40 years of what you've already earned. I can just have a great conversation with you, right? So reaching out to people who've done it and lived it, that's part of the process. Yeah.
I certainly offer that to your listeners. Anyone who wants to give me a call, I'm
Mm-hmm.
more than happy to chat with them and do what I can to
All
help
right.
them.
You better watch. You're going to get flooded there.
Uh-oh.
All right. Let's go to my next question, which is one that often comes up. And I had to struggle with this a little bit too, because I had no experience with any kind of insurance panels. But the question is commonly insurance panel or not. And I want to preface this before I have you get into the answer. While I respect that many hardworking people pay into their insurance premiums to cover their families, and they want to use their insurance, right? They want to be able to go see any kind of health provider, primary doctor, specialist, and including a mental health professional. In the best case scenario, they should be able to use their insurance. Yet that's not always as easy said. And it's not as easy
Mm.
done as it is said, right? In terms of from the end of the practitioner who's providing care. So talk about your position and what has been your experience with insurance panels or non-insurance panel practicing.
There's been a large evolution on my part in terms of insurance panels. Originally, I joined as many panels as I could. I didn't. I did everything. I joined panels. I did all my marketing. I just
Mm-hmm.
high energy outreach to the community. Um, you can issue to a client what's called a super bill. And if you don't get on a panel and someone has insurance and they want to use their insurance, you are considered an out of network provider. And therefore, you could issue them like a receipt. And it allows them to bill their insurance company directly.
Mm-hmm.
And they are paid less. Insurance is a very complex concept. And I think one of the things I want the listeners to understand is if you get on a panel, you are then capitated at the rate you agree to receive from that insurance company. So my normal rate is $240 an hour. It's going to probably go to $260 shortly. But when I bill the insurance company, I bill them at my regular rate of $240, knowing full well that I've agreed to accept a lesser amount. Say, I think it's 85 for some panels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they don't pay me 85. They pay me about 70, and the remaining 15 is what's called the copay that comes from the client. So you still have to collect the copay from the client. And they don't pay until the client reaches their deductible. So if a client comes to see you January 1st, let's say, and they've not met any of their deductible, and you bill the insurance company says, I'm sorry, they've not met their deductible. They're responsible for the full $85. You can't charge them your $240. because you contracted with the insurance company to accept up to $85. So now you turn to the client and you say, well, listen, I'm sorry, but your deductible wasn't met and you owe me 85. Well, no, I have insurance. So be prepared for that. I'm giving you a lot of detail on it, but I think this is a reality that one has to look at. Just because you get on an insurance panel, zippity-doo, they don't just start sending the money into you and, it's easy. There's a lot. I have a whole section here. I won't take the time to do it now. The pros and cons of insurance. But one of the cons is you have to do electronic billing. More and more insurance companies are requiring you to submit your claim through an electronic clearinghouse. And there are 3 or 4. I hire a woman to do all my insurance billing. She does all my billing. And even though I'm certainly capable of doing it, I don't have the desire, the interest, and certainly the expertise at this point. You have to code each of the bills. And if you, again, without going into too much detail, insurance companies require a certain specific code. And so my lady, Brooke by name, does all this billing for me. Is there a cost to it? Yeah, I think she's 30 or 35 bucks an hour. However, she gets money that I normally wouldn't get. She spends the time and follow up on clients or insurance companies that don't pay or what lingering. The other thing too is you don't receive a check anymore. Some still do, but now it's direct deposit into your account. So you have an accounting consideration when you're doing insurance billing, and a client comes in and sees you one time as an example. You turn in your insurance bill. There's a delay of maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks. You get an electronic payment in your bank account, and it simply says United Healthcare with a code and $85 or $80 or $70. Well, how do you know a month later who was United Healthcare and where that came from? So my point again is that, there are advantages. You don't have to worry about marketing because they're marketing for you. So you see there's a trade either way.
Yeah, there's a clear trade-off.
That was an answer.
It's great. I want to have you expand on it a little bit. So let me just do a follow-up quick question on this.
Sure.
Obviously, I'm out of network, so I don't take any insurance panels. I'm not on any panels at this time and have no plans of that in the near future. However, what I have seen be effective for the client experience, right? Because again, as much as I care for my patients and clients, I also care for how they can go about getting access to healthcare and mental health care being part of that. So I'd like you to speak to the listeners, maybe who haven't had this experience, of what it means to pursue a single case agreement and what are some of the benefits or challenges with that process.
I haven't done it in a while. Senior, what you're talking about is where someone comes to you and they have insurance, but you're not part of the panel. And you basically appeal to the panel and say, listen, because of my uniqueness, I'm asking that you put me on your panel either temporarily to work with this client or permanently. If you're in a more rural location, you stand a much better chance of doing that. But the service you provide has to be extremely unique. So if I then set myself up with dealing with seniors only, above the age of 65, and all of a sudden there aren't a lot of therapists that qualify with that. And suddenly I go to somebody comes to me and they say, I have insurance, you're not on my panel. I could then go to the insurance company and say, listen, I'm asking you to put me on your panel because of my unique skills. And if you can justify it, you're in good shape. And insurance companies don't want a lot of hassle either. So you have to know how to play that game. So you can call and say, listen, I know I'm unique. Certainly my legal counsel has advised me of my ability to provide these services, and we're petitioning you, and we hope it doesn't go any further than this. And I should be on the panel, correct? It's sort of a very subtle implied I want to make sure you understand that I'm serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of work, as you can see in private practice. How far do you want to go for your clients? I think that's wonderful that you have this uh, desire and to be as helpful as you can to your clients. But suddenly, what if you get a rejection from their insurance company and says, "No, I'm sorry, you're not that unique, Mr. Levitt. We don't think you're, so what? You're just an older therapist. Anybody could do your job, and thank you very much." Well, you can appeal that decision. Then you can go to the state insurance commission, and then you go, okay, but how much time does one have, especially if you're young and starting a practice? You don't want to be hung up in all the energy that goes into fighting, which is a good segue into energy. And if you're going to go into private practice, ask yourself, how much energy do I have to do all of the ancillary work that it takes to create the private practice? And the caveat that I put with that is, don't forget yourself.
Right.
You have to be, in order to survive psychotherapy, because it's such a lonely practice most of the time, you got to build in your time. And even today, and as long as I've been doing it, I do not work the weekends. Friday at 5 o'clock, I'm done, and Monday at 8 o'clock, I'm back. But as long as I've worked, nothing would. Otherwise, I have no family. I have nothing. But I'm just going to be working myself to the bone.
Right.
And so that was my security. That was my safety. And have a life outside of psychotherapy, whatever it is. Hobbies, things that are fun for you. I have a poker group. I played poker with these guys since, all the way back to 1972, as an example. And it's a Friday group of guys who just get together with a wide variety of backgrounds, and it's my mental health.
Yeah.
So there you go. It was a long-winded answer to insurance.
Well, it's a sage. It's a sage line of thought process and wisdom that I appreciate, because it's important for us to help listeners who are thinking about this, not only who are working in the psychotherapy profession, but business professionals of any profession. Your point about having a life outside of your work and having the energy. And our profession comes with the expectation that we should be practicing some of the things that we try to help our patients and clients with to take care of ourselves, because as good as we're only as good as our ability to take care of ourselves in that process.
Well said. Exactly. Well said. And look at the world we live in now. This is the 21st century, where I can be on a Caribbean island and my phone will ring from a client that's got a problem. When I first started off, everybody, the big modern thing was to carry a beeper. Wow. And when the beeper went off, you'd go to a phone and you'd dial the number and you'd say, oh, so we've come a long, long way in terms of modern technology. And we as therapists especially have to be careful of the invasive nature of the phone goes off and like, whoops, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole other topic around telehealth and all the different ways we can provide care to clients through video telehealth conferencing. So it's a really good point how the technology has also had a big impact on how these professions in the field of psychology have changed, right?
Can I segue into one more thought?
Sure.
In terms of self-care, along with that, think about your retirement and your future, financial future. And you say, Howard, wait a minute, I'm just trying to get a practice going here, and now you want me to worry about retirement. I think number one, it sneaks up on you quicker than you think. Secondly, if you plan for it, and I suggest strongly that anybody considering going into a private practice, sit down with a financial planner, an independent financial planner, not somebody who's connected to a big brokerage house that wants to sell you products. Even if you buy an hour or two of a good financial planner, and you say to that person, listen, here's my situation. I don't want to work beyond 40, 50, 60, whatever the number is.
Right.
And these are my needs. This is my partner. This is our desire. This is what we want to do. and sit down with that person and say, okay, what's it going to take for me to create my little nest egg? So it makes it a lot easier on a Friday when you're done working and you feel like you've really given everything.
Right.
You can look at the bank balance or you can look at your retirement accounts and go, okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well
And,
said. Well
yeah.
said. Financial literacy and financial capability is near and dear to my heart. That was my original
Yeah.
research, so I can appreciate that point. Well
Yeah.
noted.
You can see my economics background
I do. I'm proud of you. Yeah.
squeaking
Yeah.
through.
Former econ grads together from our undergraduate.
Yay.
Indeed.
Hallelujah.
All
That's
right.
true. That's true.
Yeah. So let's move into the next question I have for you, Howard. It's really about the marketing. You've mentioned it a couple times in your answers before. I'd like to have you share with listeners, how does the marketing process flow best when you're thinking about different marketing avenues or networking practices? What have you found to work best or optimal in identifying new clients?
Oh, you have to look at your own personality, I think, to look at the marketing. Some people are
Mm,
very comfortable giving speeches, going out handshaking, and doing the more traditional kinds of outreach. Other people are not that comfortable doing it. So I think when it comes to marketing, really look at yourself and how comfortable are you in spending early on at least 50% of your time creating relationships with others. You and I
mhm,
met, as I mentioned, at the camp meeting. That's
mhm,
brilliant on your part. I have a lot of respect for that because you're coming out and you're saying, hey, here I am. You're kind of getting a feel for that audience and who was there, who wasn't there,
mhm,
and they got to know you. And
mhm,
remember, there's something I've learned. It takes 5 contacts with somebody, 5, before they're going to refer to you. And a lot of times at meetings that I run, for the past 20 years, I've run an open free case conference for any mental health professional can come on a Friday from 9 to 11. And obviously with anonymity, we talk about all kinds of cases, anything that's bothering, just issues. Sometimes it gets personal. A therapist has issues and they want to share with the
mhm,
group. So it's a support group. It's certainly a case conference on a professional level to look at cases. And it's multidisciplinary. And I
mm,
made sure that I made it multidisciplinary. We have a psychiatrist, a couple that show, psychologists that are there, LMFTs, LCSWs, LPCs, anybody dealing with mental health, school counselors. Well, that marketing, for me, that was my way of several things. One, it provided me a sense of community and a place that I could deal with some of my difficult cases. It also provided me with the knowledge of other people. You're a good example. You say, well, you like grief issues. Okay, that goes in the back of my mind. So if I have an issue with somebody that has grief and I'm not really an expert at it or comfortable or don't want it, I say, hey, here's. So it's a way to uh, grow one's practice, if you will, by reaching out. But again, not everybody's comfortable doing that. Well, there are other ways to do it. It's not just always, the handshakes. And some people like writing, so they'll write or podcasts or um, I think of other ways through their church or their synagogue. They go and they become advisors, and they go to the priest or the rabbi and say, "Listen, I'm willing to do a weekend group for free or an evening group for free." I used to put on school lectures where I, for free, I'd put an hour a lecture on parenting skills,
mm.
positive things. By the way, positive always sells.
Absolutely.
Negative has a difficult time. I've done workshops on drug abuse and the treatment of drug, you get very low turnout. Nobody really wants to be dealing with that. So, more positive you can be. 10 positives 10 positive things you can do in parenting your children. 5 tricks of the trade in parenting your children. Always offer something. But remember, it's 5 contacts. So you may give a speech and everybody, oh, that's great. Well, you got to keep giving the speech, or you got to meet the therapist 3 and 4 and 5 times. So just because somebody comes up to you and says, here's my card and I'm great, and I'm a great Jungian therapist. Oh, okay, thank you. And you never see him again. I'm sorry. There you go. There's a kind of a quick overview, at least parts of things about marketing.
Yeah, I will just add to, I've seen you in action, so I think you're being really humble. I've seen you at
Thank
camp
you.
meetings, and just also I would throw in there having fun with people, right? You bring a certain energy to connecting, that you make it easy for others to approach you, and the way in which you invite others to connect with you is very collaborative in nature and cooperative. And so I would just throw that
Well,
out there,
thank you.
that just observing you, in addition to things that I've learned over my career, is that when you have a kind and compassionate uh, focus on how you want to connect with people, and you live that, it shows up, right? It doesn't have to be manufactured or masked. It's just a natural way of going about your life, and people who want to connect in that way will find you, right? So that's how I found you. I saw you in action, engaging people at different tables during the luncheon, talking to some of your former students that you have had in your
Mm-hmm.
Pepperdine courses, and I thought,
Well,
wow,
thank
this is a
you.
person that I really admire, his focus and his willingness to do outreach to others and invite people to experiences where they can learn together. So that I would just throw that in there as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. By the way, that's very kind of you. I really appreciate that.
Mm,
Do not be afraid to give things away.
mm, mhm,
And I like tricks of the trade, or like what I
mhm,
do, or this
mhm,
concept of giving a free parenting skills workshop. And somebody came up to me once and they said, Howard, why are you giving away all your trade secrets, if you will? You're giving,
mhm,
why don't? And I said, listen, number one, most people can't or won't copy you anyways.
mhm,
You can
mhm,
give anything away, but it's a spirit of giving that people
mm,
sense. And they're going to say, gee, I like this guy. I can trust him. He's not. I was at one of our case conferences, and there was this very bright PhD, and this person had a whole bit of research and part of his technique on how he worked. I don't want to give it. I want to be nice to this person. I don't want to give too
mhm,
much of a clue, but the point
mhm,
I'm after is he had done a lot of research. He'd come up with a lot of interesting and important stuff that we could have used with some of our
mm,
clients. And
mhm,
so I said, gee, would you be willing to send me that info? I really would like it. He said,
mm,
absolutely not.
mm,
I said, why not? He said, I've done a lot of time and research on this, and I'm going to keep it for myself because I need it for my clients. And if people want me, they can come to me. Wow.
mm,
I mean, what happened? In my mind, he dropped
mhm,
several pegs. If you're not going to be
mhm,
open and collaborative, come on, this
mhm.
is a tough business as it is.
Yeah,
And you're going to be very cloistered. And, so obviously I'm not comfortable with that.
yeah.
That's not
He
the kind of
left
person I want.
the wrong lasting impression on you. To this moment, I can see
The
you're
wrong,
still
yeah,
processing that. Yeah, yeah. And
yeah. And
it's a sad part of, of any profession, but our profession too, right? Where we're in the spirit of helping people and the practice of helping people. You think that
yeah,
you want to share that, and more people get impacted by your work than within your own reasonable scope of influence.
you also want to come prepared, because I like that phrase. You only get one chance. What was it? You only get one first impression.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so you want to come prepared. If you go to a meeting, have a business card. I know it's old school.
Hmm.
Have
Hmm.
a business card, but at least has your email on it. It might have
Hmm.
your website if you have one, but it's still something physical you can give to somebody. Or modern days, you say, well, do you have an iPhone? I'll share my info with you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you want to come prepared to be professional. This is not a hobby, this is a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you meet somebody, I always carry business cards in my wallet, just in case. I got a business card.
Absolutely.
So be prepared, be giving. I think that's 5 contacts and be giving. You got it from there.
Excellent. All right. We're coming down to our
Good.
last question for this interview discussion today. And here's one that I think is going to be really important to listen to as well for our listeners. So I'm curious, who would you say are the professionals? You mentioned one already, like a financial advisor, but who would you say are the other professionals that someone should be seeking out to help them build, sustain, and expand, their practice over time, starting a private practice in therapy?
With a financial planner, possibly a web designer, somebody to do, if you're going to have a web page, a web presence. I wouldn't spend an awful lot of money on that. I think maybe collaborate with someone who's been there and done it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of anybody else. Insurance is rather easy. Be sure to get slip and fall insurance on your office.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Good
like
point.
$500 a year. Yeah, so you need to have that. But no, malpractice insurance is covered. That's easy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think the financial planner is the most important. And remember, it's a business. This is not. It's a giving profession, but you also have to make a living at it.
Yeah.
And don't be ashamed of that. Don't feel bad about that. It's important because then you have self-worth.
Right.
And one of the most difficult things I think for students is, how do I ask for the money? How do I feel I'm worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of that. Maybe an insurance biller in the beginning to help you get structured. If you're going to do that, I would definitely. And by the way, an ethical biller. There's a lot.
Ethical biller. Yes, there's a lot of people out there.
There's a
in your
lot of
inbox,
scamming
your
going
email,
on.
your text messages. Oh yeah. Be careful.
Well, there's some stuff going on now, without getting too deep into it, that borders on fraud.
Yeah.
And so be careful when you bill, that you bill correctly.
Right.
Otherwise you can get caught in that. And so my fee, if anybody asks my fee, it's $240 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If you have insurance, that's okay. Just you always want to have a single fee. You don't have a variety of fees.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're Blue Cross, my fee is this. If you're this, it's that. And that. No, my fee is $240 an hour. If you have insurance, there's a different rate of payment on that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds kind of technical, but I think you want to make sure that legally you only have one fee.
Right.
That's the point in that. From my years of testifying in court, which is a whole nother world that we don't want to get into right now. Maybe we do. Testifying, but that's another avenue that one could pursue too, is being a forensic therapist.
Right. Yeah. I've actually worked with someone as a mentor who does a lot of that in court as a clinical neuropsychologist. And so I've heard of that as well. I want to follow up on one other thing you said that's important. You talked about having a financial advisor. I would also just throw in there, and I'm sure you'll probably diddle this, is that if you're going to be dealing with tax filing, having a good CPA, or at least someone who tax preparer, and
Right.
if you need legal advice, have somebody that you have at least some options, someone you can call and pick up the phone and get some support from. I know Camp has legal services that's covered under the membership. You can call in, but if you need some more intensive work than having an attorney that knows your profession, whether it's psychotherapy or another profession, right? I think those are always great things to have in mind. So I know you and I've talked about that before, but I just thought I would throw that out there as well.
Absolutely agree. A good CPA that you trust. And the reason I guess I combine mine with a financial planner because he does both. But you're right.
Ah, okay.
But somebody to prepare those taxes at the end of the year and keep you as financially profitable as possible.
Yeah.
And that's a good one. I would agree.
Excellent.
CAMF does provide legal advice. They tend to be very generic with it. If you can, what I have found to be helpful is my malpractice insurance also provides legal advice. And they tend to be more in depth because remember, they want to keep you out of the courtroom because they don't want to be paying any claims.
They don't want to be paying any claims. Yeah.
No. And I have found them to be excellent, by the way.
That's good.
So feel free to use your malpractice insurance as another vehicle for help.
That is a great recommendation. Yeah, definitely. All right.
Okay.
Well, I want to do a wrap up of a couple highlights that I got from you as some mindfulness solutions that I want to just kind of do a run through as we're wrapping up. Excellent information, Howard. So what I took note of for our listeners to check in on is what is your vision? I love that question, and really having a plan and knowing your niche, right? So that you're not trying to boil the ocean, that you're not trying to be everything to everyone, because it's just not possible. And it sounds like you've been very clear about where you are now in your career. You know your lane. You stay in your lane and you're able to do quality work and providing your patients the kind of care they deserve and doing it in a way that is unique to your capabilities and your experience. So that resonates very big in terms of what's your vision and knowing your lane and knowing your niche. The other couple points I want to call out were really having a good balance of self-care, knowing that you got to take care of yourself. And you mentioned having your weekends with your family. And just because we are a giving profession, as you mentioned, doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the opportunity to earn revenue for our business enterprises and pay ourselves competitively and have time with our families and friends and our community. I love that you've been playing poker since 1972 with a group of people that you really enjoy spending time with. That's practicing joy, right? Yeah. So we want our patients to practice joy. We also need to practice joy in our life experience. So that was a really standout point. And the networking piece, which is really I kind of chuckle when I listen to you talk because you have so much wisdom because you've seen so many decades of this, right? So you can talk from the beeper, and I remember beepers, but you had to go to a payphone and call the person back, to recognizing that networking and engaging people is really always about human connection. And your touch point on 5 connects with a person before they probably feel comfortable giving you a referral, and knowing that that's more about transformational connection, not transactional. It's not about, hey, let me keep touching base with you so you can give me business. It's more about learning together, connecting and working together. And the point you also made about doing some things just because it feels good to do it for the right reasons. It could be free. Holding a workshop, doing a group session, 10 tips on helping parents manage stress, right? With school children, or, helping families figure out ways to plan better, for their life management, things like that really brings people to the table. Right. That kind of positivity is very, it's gravitational in nature. It brings people back to a place where they can really relate and see what they have in common with each other and with you. And the other point is just like having the right kind of professionals, having that CPA or that financial planner who can do that work to make sure you're on point. Because I often hear a big fear from friends and associates in this field is that I don't know if I'm going to make enough money or if I'm going to be able to pay my taxes the right way. You don't have to have all those answers. Get a professional to support you in that. Let them do their job in helping you do your job. So those were just great points, Howard, all the way around. So before I wrap up, any final just thought you want to bring it home to before I bring us to a wrap up?
I thought of this as you were talking. I think I took myself far too seriously in the beginning. And I think in looking back, relax and be much more of yourself than what I thought was the professional image I needed to project. And I think just being yourself and being comfortable with yourself and what you have to offer. And remember, it's the relationship that's key, the relationship with your clients that's key. That to me is the heart of therapy. And once you're comfortable with that, I think everything else flows from there. So, and I certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to share with your audience. And again, anyone has any questions, you're welcome to give me a call. I don't mind it. I enjoy it, actually. I think it's part of the give back that we can do. So there you be. And again, thank you. And
thank you very much, Howard. Wonderfully done. And I'm
thank
gracious
you.
and so excited for others to hear this interview discussion between us today, because I think that it will provide some great insights to help others think about their plans. And I want to remind our listeners that we can give you this information through multiple platforms. If you subscribe to this podcast, it's on many different platforms. Also, our MindSoft YouTube channel will have this available for you, and future upcoming episodes as well. Again, I want to thank my guest, Howard, as he's done a great job of answering some really important questions today. And I want to put in a plug that Howard is working on some pretty exciting work that I'm going to try to work with him on collaborative at the workshop to get more into the details of how you get into starting a private practice. So look out for some more information from Howard on that as you check out his website and his information that will be available as well. And please, if you like this episode and like the podcast, please do share this episode and others that can benefit from the information. And I want to invite you to continue to be mindful and to choose joy. Thank you.
Thank you.